He's strong. That's what The Rock said when he opened up about the 10 toughest men he ever faced inside a wrestling ring. From legitimate fighters who could break bones for real to legends who bled for the business. Some names on his list make perfect sense. Others, not so much. Because when you dig deeper into The Rock's choices, contradictions start appearing, motivations get questioned, and you begin to wonder if this list reveals more about Dwayne Johnson's ego than it does about actual toughness. Number 10. Chris Benoit. The Rock acknowledged Benoit as a legendary technician whose matches required intense physical toughness. Their bout at Fully Loaded 2000 was highly rated, pitting The Rock's brawling style against Benoit's technical precision. Benoit was known for working stiff, meaning his opponents had to be genuinely tough to absorb the impact of his moves while maintaining the pace of the match. On the surface, this seems like a straightforward pick. Benoit brought intensity and realism to every performance. But here's where things get deeply problematic. In 2007, Chris Benoit murdered his wife and son before taking his own life. His brain showed severe damage from years of concussions, leading to a tragic and horrifying end that shocked the wrestling world. WWE has since scrubbed Benoit from their history as much as possible, refusing to acknowledge his existence beyond the bare minimum required by historical record. So what does it mean that The Rock includes Benoit on his list of toughest opponents? Is he praising the in-ring performer while ignoring the human being? Is he separating the technical skill from the tragedy? The truth is, you can't talk about Benoit's toughness without confronting what that toughness cost. The stiff style, the constant head trauma, the damage that accumulated over years of matches, all of that contributed to a deteriorating brain that ended in unspeakable horror. Benoit's toughness wasn't admirable, it was destructive. It killed him and his family, and The Rock's inclusion of him on this list, without any acknowledgement of that context, suggests a troubling blindness to the real cost of the toughness he's celebrating. When you glorify someone's ability to work through pain and deliver stiff matches, you're also glorifying the very thing that may have destroyed their brain and led to tragedy. Number 9. John Cena. During an interview, The Rock praised Cena as an animal when it came to discipline and focus. He noted that no one trained harder or more consistently than Cena, that no one understood the value of diet and conditioning better. For over a decade, Cena maintained a grueling schedule while staying in peak physical condition. That kind of sustained professional excellence represents modern toughness. By The Rock's own words, Cena embodied the discipline required to succeed at the highest level. Except The Rock is leaving out a massive part of their history. During their actual feud leading up to WrestleMania 28, The Rock publicly mocked Cena. He made fun of his dedication, called him soft, questioned his toughness. The Rock played the returning legend, putting the current star in his place, using his Hollywood success as proof of his superiority. He wasn't praising Cena's discipline then. He was weaponizing it, making Cena's earnest dedication seem lame compared to The Rock's cool guy persona, and fans ate it up. But then something shifted. After their matches, after The Rock had proven he could still go in the ring when he wanted to, after he'd satisfied his own ego by beating Cena at WrestleMania, suddenly Cena became someone worth praising. Suddenly Cena's discipline was admirable instead of mockable. The hypocrisy is stunning. The Rock's definition of Cena's toughness changed based entirely on what served The Rock's image at any given moment. When he needed to look cool and effortless, Cena's work ethic was something to ridicule. When he needed to look gracious and wise, Cena's work ethic was something to celebrate. The toughness didn't change. Only The Rock's need to use it for his own purposes changed. This isn't respect, it's manipulation. Number 8. The Undertaker. The Rock called him a cornerstone of WWE, someone who delivered great matches night after night for 3 decades. Maintaining the intimidating presence of the dead man character required consistent physical excellence and psychological commitment. To stay at the main event level that long, portraying a character that fearless and imposing, demanded a unique kind of mental toughness. The Undertaker's longevity alone puts him in rare company. But here's the reality that The Rock glosses over. Most of his praise for The Undertaker came after Taker's retirement. During their actual rivalry, when they were competing for position and spotlight, the respect was far less obvious. The Rock was trying to be the next big thing. The Undertaker was the established legend protecting his territory. Their matches were professional, but the backstage dynamic was more complicated than The Rock now lets on. By praising Taker's toughness in retrospect, The Rock gets to position himself as someone who battled and learned from a legend, rather than someone who was trying to replace that legend, whether the legend liked it or not. It's easier to respect respect someone's toughness when they're no longer a threat to your spot. The Undertaker earned genuine respect through decades of consistent performance, but The Rock's acknowledgement of that respect always seems to come with perfect timing for his own narrative needs. He waited until it was safe, until Taker couldn't compete with him anymore, until the praise would make him look magnanimous rather than threatened. Number 7. Ken Shamrock. Known as the world's most dangerous man, Shamrock came from mixed martial arts with genuine combat credentials. He was stiff in the ring, meaning his moves had real force behind them. Working with Shamrock required actual toughness because you were going to get hit for real. The Rock inducted him into the Impact Hall of Fame, recognizing their legendary matches during the Attitude Era. On paper, Shamrock's inclusion makes sense. He brought legitimate fighting pedigree to professional wrestling. But notice the timing. The Rock's praise for Shamrock came years after Shamrock's WWE run ended. During Shamrock's actual time with the company, WWE never gave him full credit for his fighting background. They toned him down, made him part of the scripted show rather than the legitimate threat he could have been. And The Rock benefited from that. He got to work with someone who had real toughness without having to face the full extent of what Shamrock could actually do. Now, years later, when it's safe and convenient, The Rock mentions him as one of his toughest opponents. It's revisionist history designed to make The Rock look good by association. Shamrock was legitimately dangerous, but The Rock only acknowledged that danger after it couldn't hurt his career anymore. During their active rivalry, acknowledging Shamrock's true fighting ability might have made fans question why The Rock was winning their matches. But now it's just another tough guy The Rock conquered, another credential on his resume. Number 6. Triple H. The Rock and Triple H clashed constantly throughout the Attitude Era in Iron Man matches, ladder matches, and countless championship bouts. They were jockeying for position for years, both trying to prove they belonged at the top of the card. Triple H's toughness came from endurance, from being able to repeatedly absorb damage and return to a grueling main event style. Their feud lasted for years and demanded consistent physical excellence from both men. But here's what The Rock doesn't mention when he talks about Triple H: the politics. Triple H was notorious for protecting his spot, for using his relationship with key decision-makers to ensure favorable booking. And The Rock was doing the exact same thing. Their feud wasn't just physical, it was political warfare disguised as wrestling rivalry. When The Rock praises Triple H's toughness now, he's acknowledging a fellow survivor of corporate wrestling politics, someone who learned how to play the game just as well as he did. The grinding, punishing matches they had weren't tests of toughness, they were tests of who could better manipulate the system while still delivering in the ring. Triple H's toughness was his ability to maintain his spot through relationships and savvy as much as through physical performance. And The Rock recognized that because he was doing it too. This wasn't about two warriors respecting each other's physical gifts. This was about two politicians recognizing they were using the same playbook. The praise is mutual because the methods were identical. Number 5. Stone Cold Steve Austin. The Rock describes their rivalry as the greatest in sports, entertainment history. He says they pushed each other to the limit while fighting for the #1 spot in the company. And there's truth in that. Their matches defined an era. The physicality was real, the competition intense. Austin worked through legitimate neck injuries to maintain that level of performance, calling matches old school style right there in the ring. But let's be clear about what this rivalry actually was: a war for dominance, not a friendship. The Rock frames it now as mutual respect. Two warriors pushing each other to greatness. But during that time, it was ego versus ego, star versus star, with both men fighting for creative control and main event position. The Rock wanted to be the face of WWE. Austin wanted the same thing. Neither was interested in making the other look good unless it served their own interests. So when The Rock now calls Austin one of his toughest opponents, he's technically correct. But he's also rewriting history to make it seem collaborative when it was actually cutthroat. They didn't push each other out of respect. They pushed each other out of necessity because neither would let the other win without a fight. The toughness The Rock saw in Austin wasn't admirable determination. It was a mirror reflecting his own desperate need to stay on top. Their rivalry was great for business, but it was built on competition and pride, not the mutual admiration The Rock now claims it was. Number 4. Mick Foley. Now here's where The Rock's definition of toughness gets genuinely disturbing. Their infamous I Quit match at the 1999 Royal Rumble stands as one of the most brutal contests in WWE history. The Rock hit Foley with 11 unprotected chair shots to the head. Foley's wife and children watched from ringside as their husband and father was beaten into unconsciousness. The violence was so extreme that The Rock himself later admitted it got way out of hand. People watching it years later reported feeling nauseous. So what does it say about The Rock that he includes Foley on his toughest list? Is he praising Foley's ability to absorb punishment, or is he defending his own actions that night? Because here's the truth that makes this uncomfortable. The Rock's ambition blinded him. He was so focused on creating a memorable moment, on cementing his status as a top star, that he didn't stop swinging even when Foley was clearly hurt. He went off script and kept hitting. And now, years later, he points to Foley's toughness, as if that somehow absolves him of responsibility. Foley was tough, yes. Unbelievably, tragically tough. He sacrificed his physical and mental health for the business, but The Rock's praise feels less like respect and more like justification. He's saying, look how tough Foley was, see how much he could take, as a way to avoid confronting the fact that he inflicted damage no performer should have endured. Foley's toughness became The Rock's alibi for his own recklessness. The inclusion of Foley on this list isn't an honor, it's a confession wrapped in praise. Number 3, King Tonga, better known as Haku. The Rock called his uncle legitimately one of the toughest wrestlers ever, and the stories about Haku are genuinely terrifying. He allegedly bit off a fan's nose during a bar fight. He nearly choked out Brutus Beefcake. His reputation for being dangerous backstage made him a legend among wrestlers who valued old-school toughness. The Rock confirmed many of these stories with a smile, clearly proud of the family connection. But let's address the elephant in the room: nepotism. Haku was trained by The Rock's own grandfather. He's part of the extended Anoa'i wrestling family that gave The Rock his start in the business. So when Johnson names Haku as one of his toughest opponents, how much of that is genuine assessment and how much is family obligation? Haku's toughness is built on fear and backstage stories, not athletic achievement or in-ring performance. The Rock never faced Haku during his prime. He never had to actually deal with that legendary danger when it mattered. Instead, he inherited the stories, claimed the connection, and used it to bolster his own tough guy credentials by association. It's a classic move. Align yourself with fearsome relatives, bask in their reflected glory, but never actually prove you have that same edge yourself. The Rock praised Haku because it was safe to do so, and because it reinforced the family legacy that made The Rock marketable in the first place. This isn't about respecting toughness. It's about leveraging family mythology for personal brand building. Number 2, Kurt Angle. The Rock explicitly named Angle as one of the legitimately toughest men he faced, and why wouldn't he? Angle was a 2-time NCAA Division I national champion who won gold at the 1996 Summer Olympics. His amateur wrestling background was impeccable. He famously claimed he won that gold medal with a broken neck, a statement that spoke to almost unbelievable pain tolerance and mental resolve. Angle's Olympic pedigree provides the ultimate level of credibility in combat sports. Yet here's the contradiction worth examining. The Rock praised Angle's toughness when it served his narrative, when it made him look good to align himself with Olympic excellence. But as The Rock transitioned into Hollywood, that relationship became more about public relations than genuine respect born from pain. Angle brought realism to professional wrestling through his shoot-style technique. He made matches feel legitimate. The Rock, meanwhile, was perfecting his eyebrow raise and catchphrases for a different kind of audience. By the time Angle was inducted into the Impact Hall of Fame, with The Rock doing the honors, it felt convenient. A way for Johnson to attach himself to authentic athletic achievement while he was busy making family movies. Did The Rock truly respect Angle's Olympic toughness, or did he respect what associating with that toughness did for his own image? The timing of his praise always seemed to coincide with moments when The Rock needed credibility, not when he was actively in the ring absorbing Angle's intensity. It's strategic admiration, not earned respect. Number 1, Brock Lesnar. On paper, this pick is undeniable. Lesnar won the UFC Heavyweight Championship in 2008, proving he could fight for real outside the scripted world of WWE. His physical strength became the stuff of legend. JBL once said Lesnar threw him like a child, comparing his power to an Avenger. The Rock recognized this immediately. When they met at SummerSlam 2002, Johnson made a decision that seemed noble at the time. He let Lesnar win clean, sacrificing his own typical booking protection to launch the younger star's career. But here's where things get interesting. Was this really about respect, or was it about fear? The Rock had spent years protecting his image, rarely losing cleanly to anyone. Yet with Lesnar, he didn't just lose, he deferred. Some would call it passing the torch. Others might call it getting out of the way before the real fighter exposed him. Because let's be honest, in a legitimate fight, Lesnar would destroy The Rock. And maybe Dwayne Johnson knew that. Maybe his praise for Lesnar's toughness was less about admiration and more about acknowledging a threat he couldn't actually match. The Rock built his career on charisma charisma and movie star looks. Lesnar built his own legitimate combat credentials. There's a difference, and The Rock's decision to put Lesnar over so decisively suggests he understood exactly where he stood on that spectrum. Lesnar represents everything The Rock wasn't, an actual fighter with verified combat skills. By placing him at number 1 and deferring to him so completely, The Rock wasn't showing respect. He was showing recognition of his own limitations. So what does this list really tell us? 10 names, 10 different versions of toughness, and all of them serve a purpose in The Rock's carefully constructed narrative. He praises legitimate fighters like Lesnar and Angle when it gives him credibility by association. He acknowledges family connections like Haku when it reinforces his wrestling lineage. He celebrates durability warriors like Foley and Austin while downplaying his own role in perpetuating the violence that defined their careers. He respects political survivors like Triple H because they played the same game he did. He honors legends like The Undertaker after they can no longer threaten his position. He flip-flops on Cena based on whatever narrative serves him at the moment. He includes Benoit without confronting the tragedy that toughness created. And he defers to Lesnar because the alternative would be exposing himself as less tough than he claimed. The underlying problem with this entire list is that The Rock is glorifying toughness without interrogating what toughness actually meant in the wrestling industry he came from. He's praising men who destroyed their bodies and minds for entertainment. He's celebrating a culture that valued pain, tolerance over safety, that measured worth by how much damage someone could endure. Foley's ability to take 11 chair shots to the head isn't toughness. It's a symptom of an industry that treated human beings as disposable. Benoit's stiff working style wasn't artistic integrity. It was a recipe for brain damage. The Undertaker's 30-year career performing a physically demanding character wasn't just dedication, it was a grinding toll on a human body that will have consequences for the rest of his life. And The Rock benefited from all of it. He worked with these tough guys, these durable warriors, these legitimate fighters, and he came out the other side relatively unscathed. He got to be the guy who faced the toughest competition, who survived the Attitude Era, who proved himself against legends. And then he walked away to become a movie star while many of the men he's now praising on his toughest list dealt with the long-term consequences of that toughness. Broken bodies, chronic pain, mental health struggles, and in Benoit's case, a complete psychological breakdown. So when The Rock lists his 10 toughest opponents, what is he really saying? Is he honoring these men? Or is he using their sacrifice to burnish his own legend? Because if you look closely at his choices and the timing of his praise, patterns emerge. Every choice, every bit of praise, every acknowledgement of toughness serves a purpose in building The Rock's brand. He's the guy who faced the best and came out on top. The taxonomy of toughness The Rock uses is revealing: legitimacy, durability, intimidation, and discipline. 4 categories that measure different aspects of what made these men formidable. But there's a 5th category he never mentions: survival. Who survived the toughness test intact? Who made it through with their health, their family, their sanity? By that measure, The Rock himself might be the toughest person on this list because he's the one who figured out how to leave. Maybe that's the most cynical reading of this list. Maybe The Rock names these 10 men as his toughest opponents not because he truly respected their toughness, but because he knew he could outlast it. He could take what he learned from Angle's intensity, Lesnar's legitimacy, Austin's competitive drive, Triple H's political savvy, and Cena's discipline, and then he could leave before any of it destroyed him the way it destroyed others. Professional wrestling has always had a complicated relationship with toughness. The business rewards those who can work through pain, who never say no, who sacrifice their bodies for the show. But that same toughness often leads to shortened careers, addiction, and early deaths. The tough guys become cautionary tales as often as they become legends. And The Rock's list sits right at that intersection. He's celebrating the very qualities that may have ultimately harmed the men he's praising. Look at the criteria again: legitimacy, the ability to actually fight; durability, the ability to absorb punishment; intimidation, the reputation for being dangerous; discipline, the commitment to maintaining peak physical condition despite injury. All of these things sound positive in the abstract, but in practice they meant Foley taking unprotected chair shots. They meant Benoit's brain deteriorating from repeated concussions. They meant Austin's neck getting progressively worse while he kept working. They meant The Undertaker performing through injuries that should have ended his career years earlier. The Rock learned from all of this. He absorbed the lessons these tough guys taught him about what it took to succeed in wrestling. And then he applied those lessons in a different context, one where the physical toll was lower and the financial reward was higher. Hollywood requires discipline and work ethic, which he learned from Cena. It requires understanding politics and relationships, which he learned from Triple H. It requires projecting strength and intimidation, which he learned from Haku. Haku and The Undertaker. But it doesn't require getting hit in the head with chairs or working through broken bones or sacrificing your physical health the way wrestling did. So The Rock's list of toughest wrestlers is really a list of teachers, men who showed him what toughness looked like in wrestling, giving him the tools he needed to be tough in a different way. The irony is that by being less tough than these men in the traditional wrestling sense, by being willing to leave when the opportunity arose, The Rock ended up more successful than most of them. His toughness was knowing when to stop being tough. There's an argument that this makes The Rock smart, not cowardly, that recognizing the diminishing returns of wrestling toughness and pivoting to a career where his charisma could thrive without the physical destruction was the intelligent choice. And there's truth in that. The Rock doesn't owe wrestling his health or his life. He gave the business several years of top-tier performance, created memorable moments, and moved on before the toll became permanent. But if that's the case, then his list of toughest wrestlers takes on a different meaning. It becomes a memorial of sorts, an acknowledgement of men who either couldn't leave or wouldn't leave or didn't have the opportunities to leave that The Rock had. Lesnar is the exception. He found another venue for his toughness that respected and compensated it appropriately. But the others, they stayed in wrestling because it was what they knew, or because they loved it despite the cost, or because they didn't have Hollywood knocking on their door with franchise opportunities. The Rock's praise for their toughness, then, is complicated. It's genuine in the sense that he witnessed firsthand what these men were capable of enduring. But it's also the praise of someone looking back from a position of safety and success, someone who can afford to be generous with his respect because he's no longer competing with these men for anything. His toughness list is nostalgia filtered through survivor's guilt and strategic brand management. Consider how different this list might be if The Rock was still an active wrestler. Would he be as generous with his praise? Would he acknowledge these men's strengths so freely if they were still threats to his position? Or would he be like he was during his active career, carefully managing his image, protecting his spot, making sure that every acknowledgement of someone else's ability came with an implicit assertion of his own superiority? The timing of wrestling praise always matters. Current rivals are respected but carefully managed. Past rivals become legends we learn from. The Rock's list exists in that comfortable past tense space where he can be magnanimous without cost. He can call Brock Lesnar legitimately tough because they're not competing for the same roles anymore. He can praise Angle's Olympic pedigree because that pedigree is now decades old. He can acknowledge Haku's fearsome reputation because Haku's retired. The toughness he's celebrating is safely in the past. No longer a threat, easily converted into stories that make The Rock himself look good. This is not necessarily malicious. It's simply how the wrestling business works. Everyone protects their spot when they're active. Everyone becomes generous with praise after they've secured their legacy. The Rock is following a well-established pattern, but recognizing the pattern doesn't make it less calculated. His list of toughest wrestlers is curated. It's designed. It serves specific purposes in maintaining his brand as someone who faced the best, learned from the best, and surpassed the best. And maybe that's okay. Maybe we shouldn't expect genuine, unfiltered honesty from someone whose entire career was built on performance and image management. The Rock is a character as much as he is a person. The list of toughest wrestlers comes from the character, crafted to tell a specific story about Dwayne Johnson's journey through professional wrestling. It's entertainment, just like everything else in wrestling. The toughness is real. The respect has elements of truth, but the presentation is always a work. The question is what we do with that information. Do we take The Rock's list at face value, accepting his assessment of toughness as definitive? Or do we interrogate it, looking for what's being said and what's being left unsaid? What does it mean that he praises Foley's durability, but not his own role in Foley's injuries? What does it mean that he celebrates Cena's discipline after mocking it? What does it mean that he includes Benoit without addressing the tragedy? Maybe The Rock's list says less about his rivals and more about him. Because in a world built on pain, fame, and survival, sometimes the toughest thing is figuring out what toughness is actually worth. These 10 men taught The Rock different lessons about different kinds of toughness. Some taught him what to aspire to, others taught him what to avoid, and a few taught him that the smartest form of toughness is knowing when to walk away. The wrestling business celebrates toughness because it needs tough people to perpetuate itself. If everyone walked away when the pain got too great, when the injuries accumulated, when the mental toll became obvious, there would be no wrestling industry. So wrestling creates a culture that honors toughness, that makes heroes of people who endure, that turns physical sacrifice into a measure of worth. And The Rock's list participates in that culture, perpetuating the idea that toughness is admirable, that these men should be celebrated for what they were willing to endure. But there's another way to read this list. As a catalog of costs, each name represents a different price paid for success in wrestling. Lesnar Lesnar paid by having to prove himself in actual combat sports to be taken seriously. Angle paid with a neck that will never be fully healthy. Haku paid by becoming a legend more for violence than for artistry. Foley paid with his body and possibly his long-term cognitive function. Austin paid with a neck injury that forced early retirement. Triple H paid with decades of political maneuvering that made him as much businessman as performer. Shamrock paid by never being fully appreciated for his legitimate credentials. The Undertaker paid with 30 years of physical destruction. Cena paid by being mocked for the very qualities that made him successful. And Benoit paid with everything, including his life and his family. The Rock's inclusion on any toughness list would note that he paid by leaving. He gave up being a full-time wrestler to pursue other opportunities. So maybe The Rock's list of 10 toughest wrestlers is really a list of 10 different versions of himself he chose not to become. He could have been Lesnar, the legitimate fighter proving himself in real combat. He could have been Angle, the technical purist grinding out classics despite injuries. He could have been Haku, the feared enforcer whose reputation overshadowed his performance. He could have been Foley, sacrificing his health for memorable moments. He could have been Austin, retiring broken but legendary. He could have been Triple H, becoming a corporate figure while still trying to wrestle. He could have been Shamrock, never quite getting the recognition his skills deserved. He could have been Undertaker, staying too long out of love for the business. He could have been Cena, maintaining discipline despite being mocked. He could have been Benoit, working until his brain couldn't function anymore. Instead, he became The Rock, the guy who learned from all of them and then charted his own path. The guy who understood that toughness in wrestling was valuable, but toughness in knowing your own limits was more valuable still. The guy who could praise these tough wrestlers from a distance, acknowledging their contributions while implicitly arguing that his way was better. Is that cynical? Maybe, but it's also honest. The Rock's list of toughest wrestlers exists because The Rock survived to make the list. Many on the list are still dealing with the consequences of their toughness. Some can barely walk. Some struggle with pain management. One ended in unspeakable tragedy. The Rock, he's making movies, building business empires, and occasionally visiting wrestling when it's convenient or profitable. That's not a criticism of The Rock's career choices. It's a recognition that toughness is complicated, that celebrating these men's ability to endure might also mean celebrating the system that required them to endure more than any person should. That The Rock's escape from that system doesn't make him less tough. It makes him differently tough. Smart tough, survival tough. Maybe in the end, the real measurement of toughness isn't who can take the most punishment. It's who can keep their soul intact while operating in an industry designed to break bodies and exploit sacrifice. By that measure, The Rock's list tells us exactly who passed the test. It's not the 10 names on the list. It's the man who made the list and lived to tell about it. Because when you name your toughest opponents, you're really naming the obstacles you overcame. You're claiming victory over their challenges. You're saying, I faced these men, these legitimately dangerous men, these durable warriors, these intimidating figures, these disciplined athletes, and I came out on top. Not because I was tougher than them in the traditional sense, but because I was tough enough to learn from them and smart enough to not let that toughness destroy me the way it may have destroyed some of them. That's The Rock's real story, and that's what his list of 10 toughest wrestlers is actually about.